Eric Swalwell, thanks for sitting down.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, congratulations on the show.
Thank you. So here we are on Sunday morning. I'm sure you've done what I've been doing over the last 15 hours. You're trying to process all of this. And let's take the politics out for a minute. Are we more secure today or less secure today?
We don't know. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. We're waiting to see if the strike eliminated their ability or significantly set it back. But the next moves on the chessboard is what worries me, because I don't see this president and his team as the type that think that through, because Iran is saying they've already moved the materials. Russia is saying we're prepared to give Iran nuclear weapons. Whatever happens, I think we accelerate Iran's determination to get nuclear weapons. They're probably going to kick all of the IAEA monitors out of the country now, leave the non-proliferation treaty, and potentially immediately respond in a way that could threaten 40,000 American troops who are in the region. So I think it's hard to say, but I can tell you this: the president over the last couple of weeks, whether it was going to the American people or going to Congress, did not share any intelligence that Iran had imminent access to a nuclear weapon that could threaten the United States. That case was never made. And so I'll be back tomorrow at Congress and very eager to find out what the intelligence is.
What do you expect the attitude to be? And there's a part of me that thinks it's going to feel like, all right, there's going to be a lot of complaints about something that you can do nothing
Sure.
about.
That's right.
You know, so like, what's that line?
So we can't now let this spiral out of control. That'll be the first concern. Second, no, I don't see any appetite for, escalating this, for any commitment by the United States to put ground troops.
Do you think there's an appetite for Congress to put handcuffs on him?
Yes. Yeah.
You do?
Time, troops, terrain. The 3 T's, as Speaker Pelosi would often say. That's Congress's role.
You think that can be done?
Well, there's going to be a vote, I imagine, what we call a privileged resolution in the next couple of days in the House. Talk to senators. They expect the same thing to come there. But it's in our interest to not get mired in another Middle East conflict. Again, there has been no intelligence that justifies what the president has done. And
I was thinking about the only rationalization he might have been able to use that might work with some people is that this is what a country would do if it saw itself as the world's beat cop. Because this is a preventative action. It's not preemption, and it's not imminent, but it's preventative. Is long term, would the world be better off with Iran without a nuclear weapon? So this is beat cop-like behavior, which of course is the exact opposite of certainly what he said he was going to do. But forget what he said. Is that enough for justification?
No, because we've tried to be the beat cop before, twice in the last 25 years. Certainly with Afghanistan, where I would say we had a righteous reason to hit back, and then Iraq, where many people from my generation went over there and died for an unrighteous reason, an outright lie to the American people. And again, people are just asking, like, wait, they're pumping the brakes. What was the emergency? Because your director of national intelligence came to Congress and said that Iran was not close to what the president is now saying. And
for a guy, she wasn't in the room apparently.
I've heard conflicting reports as to whether she was or wasn't, but this guy says he hires the best people, and then the second she disagrees with him, throws her under the bus. And when you're putting troops in harm's way and you're putting us potentially in another Middle East conflict, I think we'd like to at least believe they're all on the same page as to why we should be doing this.
You think he was serious about diplomacy and Israel basically took it off the table themselves, right? Look, there's plenty of data to support the following thesis. Netanyahu was facing a vote of no confidence from his furthest right-wing part of his coalition, and this was a way to stop them from leaving. Not to say he wasn't always focused on Iran as the threat. I'm not saying that he wasn't and that it was all politically motivated, but he certainly felt a time pressure. And the minute he goes, it does take diplomacy off the table, because you can't expect the Iranians to surrender to the Israelis.
I understand why Israel, had to do what they were doing. I mean, Iran is one of the worst malignant actors in the world, and they've brought hell to the Israeli people. What I'm saying is the case that the president is making is that Iran was an imminent nuclear threat to the United States. I haven't seen the evidence for that. And I'm all for defending Israeli skies as Iran sends ballistic missiles into Tel Aviv and the surrounding areas. But this is seriously escalatory. And as folks in the military will say, the enemy's going to have a say too. This is not a void where you strike Iran and then the president says, bizarrely, now is a time for peace. In the history of the world, no one has ever been hit, like a country of almost 100 million people gets hit the way that they just got hit and says, okay, we're done. I think we would all love to see this end, but I'm realistic that troops on our side are probably now at risk.
Look, you've at times been been able to see the most privileged intelligence that we've had over time, and without violating any violating the law here. What is the most recent assessment on our side of the stability of the Iranian regime?
There was what's called a hotspots hearing that was open for both intelligence committees in the House and the Senate, and you had Gabbard, Patel, and others testify, and they assessed that Iran was continuing to pursue a nuclear program. Iran was stating that it was for peaceful nuclear, like an energy plan, but they did not believe that it was an imminent couple weeks, couple months.
Don't you think they saw it as a regime protector? Like getting a nuclear weapon. Look at Kim Jong-un, right? He, to me, is the example of why every rogue nation around the world is going to want a nuclear weapon.
Sure, yes. But we also I don't think this gang understands on our side who replaces the regime if you take them out, because a regime protector is also going to now accelerate its ability to try and get a nuclear weapon.
You assume that's the immediate reaction. They probably moved, you can't bomb away intelligence in the head.
Right. I mean, the Israelis have taken out a lot of their scientists, but there's a lot of engineers in Iran. They're saying that they've moved the materials. I'm waiting to see if that's true. But if you think about the regime, if this is truly a regime protector, they're going to want to accelerate their ability to have a nuclear weapon so that, as you pointed out, with North Korea, it makes you almost invincible, or it's a real deterrent. And two, they're going to have to hit back, because if they don't hit back against us, I think then they're really vulnerable to
an internal regime.
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, the folks who would bring regime change to Iran, the pro-Western, pro-freedom folks, they're not in Iran. Right. They left Iran.
They're in California, aren't they?
That's right, and Europe.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we can say we know what the next regime looks like, and it would be more pro-American or more pro-Israel.
If we had not intervened, how long could Israel have lasted on its own?
Well, I mean, Israel was pretty effective in what it was already doing to set back Iran.
And arguably gave us more of an opening than we ever had before.
Sure.
Strategically.
Yes.
Right, from just a specific military aspect. This is my guess, and we'll learn more as we learn more, of how they convinced Trump to do this. Like, you're never going to have another opportunity like this. Bush never had this opportunity. Yeah. Obama never had. Whatever you want to say about a Bush, Obama, and Biden, they never had an opportunity where Iran was this weak.
Right.
There was no Hezbollah, all those things.
But the flip side of that coin is, if Iran's skies are truly as defenseless as we have seen in the last couple of weeks, and Israel has been able to take almost, have unfettered access to the skies and their sites, do you think that country is this far away from putting a nuclear weapon in Tel Aviv? It suggests to me that they're not. And it's almost like, to go back to North Korea, propaganda city, that they have this illusion and these fake structures all around Pyongyang, which to suggest it's a first world country, and it's not. And I think that we're seeing that much of what Iran, was peacocking itself was just propaganda, and then they weren't able to really have that capability.
You brought up the Russians. I'm very curious what they do here, because they have their own risk. They have an American president that is on their side when it comes to the war in Ukraine. They don't want to risk alienating that. he can easily turn on a dime. They know he's volatile. Like, this is a case where Trump's volatility is sort of a strategic, potentially a part of the strategic thinking over there. And is Iran enough of a proxy, an important enough a proxy for them to risk that?
I don't think so. I don't think Russia.
They may trade Iran for Trump's quasi, whatever we want to call this, strategic ambiguity when it comes to Russia.
There'll
right?
probably be a price for their silence or their inaction here. You know, I saw
That's a big problem for Iran.
Yes, I saw statements from Medvedev, who was the former president and now I think is the deputy National Security Council leader in Russia. And
I think he's designated troll.
Yes.
I mean, the guy on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, I mean, he's just the most bombastic of all of them.
Right. But I do believe, Putin will see this as, if they stand down and not help Iran, it probably buys them a better position in the ultimate outcome of
chess game
of Ukraine-Russia.
How's your party going to handle this? How united? I think you're going to be united on he shouldn't have done this without Congress.
That's right. That's the tone so far.
Right. But if it's successful, this could split the party.
I don't think it splits the party because most in the party agree we can't go into the Middle East again and send troops to the Middle East, and that's half of Trump's party too.
Right.
So I mean, it's equally.
Well, we
split
saw
on
the
his
early
side.
poll was 60%. There was across the board. So this was pretty big chunks, Dems, Indies, and Republicans.
Yeah, and again, I guess, Chuck, I see it as, sure, if you could just snap your fingers or wave a wand and Iran's weapons are gone and there's no cost to the U.S. or Israel or our allies, would you do it? Sure, but that's not the reality. Like we're likely going to see blowback, and then what does Trump do when U.S. troops are killed? Do we try and take out the regime?
And that's, I was just going to say, what is it? How he handles a retaliation, and the Iranians are not very good at conventional war, but they're very good at asymmetrical warfare.
Yes. So he's taken one of their big chess pieces, but is he prepared for the next 3 or 4 moves on the board? And that's where I see a very inexperienced Secretary of Defense, where there's wide reporting that he's been cut out of most major decisions. And then you see the rest of the cabinet who are not really able to speak truth to power to him. And even Gabbard, who told Congress one thing, ran as a surrogate with him and said, this is the president of no more wars. And now she's changing her tune, saying that her statements were mischaracterized. So who is going to speak truth to power to the president and advise him as to what the next few moves are?
Who's left in the Middle East that has Iran's back? That is the surprising thing here, is just how much the Gulf,
Saudi.
Right, the Gulf states are going to say what they're going to say publicly and hope the Israelis and the Americans succeed.
Yeah, we have a large base in Qatar at Al Udeid. Bahrain, Kuwait, others are more aligned with us. But again, what does the next regime in Iran look like? I don't think anybody can tell you the answer to that. So on our party, we're going to say, this is why you have a Congress. Iran can't have weapons. Trump is not a dictator. In a democracy, that's why a Congress exists. And Congress was cut out. And oh, by the way, this is a guy who promised you no more wars, and he's adding wars to the map.
You've been here around long enough to know it seems like the only time people care about the legislative branch's loss of authority in the Constitution is when they're in the minority.
That's right. Yes.
Right? You've suddenly realized, oh, wait a minute. We could have power here if we had not handed so much of it over.
And we're only
to the
3 seats
executive.
away. So it's a very thin minority that we're in. So we shouldn't see ourselves as powerless. And you have other
But it's hard, right? You're so close, but you are kind of powerless.
Yeah.
Right? It is, you have the power of rhetoric, and you certainly have, and you can bring some motions to the floor at times, you can force some votes, but what's realistic?
What's realistic, though, is I'm seeing statements from people like Thomas Massey and other Republicans who want Congress to be consulted. So, when these motions are filed in the Senate and the House, I think they're both going to pass. And then it's on the president. Is he a no more wars president, or is this just the beginning of a new Trump foreign policy?
Walk me through how often have you been in the
Yeah.
you've been here in a decade. How
Came
often
in
have
the
you been
minority
I was just going to say
under Obama.
right. Then you got the majority in 18.
Yep.
So you were in there for
Lost it in 22.
right?
But Biden's
So
still
4 years.
president.
So
I've seen it all.
You've spent about a third of your time in the majority, 2/3 in the minority.
I've seen it all. I've seen the Holy Trinity where your party has
Right.
Senate, House, White House, and I've been in like the worst.
In your various stints in the minority, when have you felt the most powerless?
The most powerless?
Yeah.
This first now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
now.
feels like it, even though it's so close.
Yeah.
There seems to be no interest by this administration, even when there are Democrats who would support on specific ideas.
I'll tell you, the border is one where
He could have gotten
we
some
got the
bipartisan support,
message after the election, and many Democrats like myself who had been saying for a long time, we need security at the border. We can't be a party that's perceived as open borders. Come work with us. We'll give you the resources. He walked away from that opportunity, and he did it also in his first term on infrastructure. I thought, he was going to be the infrastructure president. He's a developer. He's a builder. His first major piece of legislation would be that infrastructure bill, and instead he couldn't resist to try and repeal the Affordable Care Act, and then he never had bipartisan support on anything that he did. So I think he's missed now twice in both of his first 100 days, 2 issues where he could have really united the Congress.
I'll throw in his economic policies.
Yeah.
If he wanted to raise taxes on people that made $5 million or more,
Yeah.
how many?
That's right.
You're signing up, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely
And
right.
probably a good chunk of. Everybody understands there's trade-offs, and this would have taken longer if you actually didn't use the process that they're using, but you might have gotten more durable legislation.
And instead now, we're seeing him, and through his policies, like migrant workers are running through fields, running out of car washes, running through Home Depot parking lots. And a lot of us are like, well, that's not the immigration policy that we were promised. We were promised, that the worst among us would be removed. And I think the country's now divided on immigration. They support, deportations until you tell them that it's somebody who's been here for 20 years and has a job, or somebody who's married to a U.S. citizen, or it's a child, who's suffering from cancer, because he's deported all of those groups.
He strikes me, he's turning into this ends justifies the means presidency. Hey, I'm getting rid of nuclear weapons in Iran. Aren't you happy? Never mind how I do it. I'm closing the border. Aren't you happy? Never mind how I'm doing it. Right?
It's break a few eggs to make an omelet. And then we all pay more for eggs, I guess.
Well, but there seems to be some support for that style of leadership right now. Why do you think that is?
Well, because it's action. It's
progress. It's motion. I don't know if it's,
yeah.
I get that it's motion and action, but is it progress?
And I think for Democrats, the lesson is that we can't be so weak with power in the future, because when we had the White House, the Senate, and the House, no mom in America would say that her kids were more safe in their classroom from a mass shooting, because we let the filibuster get in the way of background checks, and no minority voter would say they had more access to the ballot box, because we let the filibuster get in the way of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So we had popular policy positions that we let like norms and institutions get in the way of, and so we just looked weak because we didn't show motion.
Well, and I wonder, do you worry at all that the party will look weak by standing up and demanding they need to follow Robert's Rules of Order more?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this.
It can't be a process argument.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
we're not
do you
gonna
worry
win
at
on
all
process.
that the Iran debate could turn into a process argument?
Well, saying no more wars to me is not process. We shouldn't lead with, the Robert's Rules of Order argument. I think it should be, we've seen this before, and it's never ended well for us.
Do you think this changes? Do you anticipate that he has changed the nature of the presidency in the short term? That the next president, regardless of party, is going to take the aggressive tactics that he's used and marshal them similarly?
Well, I'm working to give us, the majority in the House and the Senate, so that the next president can do it with the authority of all of us bought in. But I do think the filibuster has to go. I think it has stood in the way for far too long. So I think that'll be the first victim of this presidency.
That's what happens. That's the reaction.
I think that's
that
the reaction.
next time there aren't enough Democrats to stop the filibuster.
Yes.
From going away.
Yeah.
Where are you on this, where the party should head? You've got progressives arguing for more of that. You've got the sort of the Rahm Emanuel argument. Where do you fall?
Well, to me, our dance with the one that brought you has always been healthcare. And it can't just be protect your care, which of course we want to protect the 15 to 20 million people who be kicked off Medicaid. When this guy's firing cancer doctors and they're being hired by, the Chinese, the Canadians, right. Europe, I think we have a chance to be a cures for all party, to really lean in on healthcare, not just protect it, but expand it and invest in it. And that's the issue that the American people have always trusted us the most on. And then it's an anti-corruption message to me. Obviously, Congress should not be trading stocks, but a code of ethics for the Supreme Court, term limits for the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court has been weakened by this president, and we have our first real opportunity in my lifetime to rein in the court. And then I guess as far as how you do it, I hope my colleagues are liberated now that Donald Trump has been elected again to just be themselves, because I see too many people who think messaging.
But you haven't cursed with me. I thought cursing was the answer. I mean, that seemed like kind of a.
My daughter's just like 10 feet away.
And that
in
did
earshot.
seem like that isn't the answer, right?
Yeah.
It just curse more.
It's the answer to me though is to just be yourself. Give your zero draft. Too often we think messaging is winning the Harvard Law School moot court competition, and to me it's just win the gut check at the bar or the bus stop.
Yeah.
And that means just tell me what's in here. Like not with Democrats, I think we govern really effectively because we govern in fine print, as Hakeem Jeffries would say, but we lose elections too often because we campaign in fine print.
I got a friend who says there's just too many lawyers in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
That going to law school, you learn all the rules, and you think, well, you got to follow these rules. I've learned all these rules. Damn it, we got to learn to follow these rules.
That's right. But that most people.
And you went to law school, right?
But I think I'm one of our better messengers because I just talk like a regular person. I was raised in a blue collar house, son of a cop, and I think we'd be well served to just. Again, give your zero draft answer. Just tell me what you believe. And the other part, and you get this too in what you're doing and the way you're doing it, always be on. And I think if there was this.
Well, because that's honest. Be honest. Don't
always
try
be
to
on. Yeah, but always be. Yeah, I guess by always being on, you're always being honest. And if you look at in the 2024 election, when Vice President Harris said she wouldn't do anything differently, and people said that was the mistake that tanked her. I actually think the mistake that tanked her was that she wasn't on again for a couple days. So she was defined by that moment.
She was just, and then two.
And Trump, he would make 5 mistakes an hour, but he's always on. So he was seen as always honest. I'm going to steal that from you.
No, it's
always on means always
true.
honest.
I used to say, the brilliance of his tweets before he got deplatformed was that as people were outraged at 8:30, he had a new one. They're chasing the 8:30 tweet. And he's over here at 9 or 9:30 talking to a whole group of people over here while the outrage machine is still getting its morning cup of coffee to deal with tweet number 1 and tweet number 2. Yeah. And so he was just saturating.
So what I've tried to do is 68% of the electorate identified as Christian in the last election, according to Pew. So I'm doing 1 Christian podcast a week.
Interesting.
I did the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God a couple weeks ago. I did the All In podcast with the tech billionaire bros. So again, not just always on, but more spaces, more places. And if you're just yourself, I think people see what our values are. And I'll take our values up against theirs if we go to those places.
Let me close with California.
Yeah.
Who should be the next governor?
It's a talented field.
You're weaseling. You know plenty of people.
I know a lot of them. Yeah.
The lieutenant governor, Koulianakis, right?
I'll say this. The next governor has to make public safety a priority. I led the recall effort of a district attorney who was a defund the police, won't prosecute, Alameda County.
Or the Alameda County.
So I was a prosecutor in that office. Earl Warren was a prosecutor in the office. Kamala Harris was a prosecutor. And this woman came in, wouldn't prosecute cases, went after the cops, and she was thrown out with 63% of the vote in one of the most liberal counties in America. People want to be safe. And I think we've lost that as a party. And I think the next governor is going to be somebody who makes people.
What would you tell the former vice president? Is it worth it running for governor?
That's her decision. She's a friend. I've known her for 15 plus years. Went to her wedding. I would say, make sure this is what you want to do and not what other people are telling you need to do. because politics is not a ladder, and I think you can make a lot of mistakes if you see it that way. But public safety, that's the top issue in California.
There's a lot of
right now.
statewide offices. You chose not to run for any of them.
I've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old. I love the House, and winning the House is the most important thing I can do right now. I think helping us be a part of that effort. If we lose the House, you
don't win these
mentioned this.
midterms.
If we don't win the midterms, I don't see how we have free and fair elections in 2028. And
You're that concerned.
I'm
about
that concerned.
28.
And also, as you alluded to earlier, Donald Trump doesn't even respect a Republican Congress. So if we see further losses and don't have the ability to put him into account, I think this looks more and more like an authoritarian regime than we've ever seen in American history.
So for you, the midterms are
midterms
more
is everything.
consequential than perhaps. I'm exhausted from all the most important elections of my lifetime that I've been in.
Yeah,
But you
we
really
can't lose
feel
the
like
midterms.
this one is a
Can't
big
lose the midterms.
one. Eric Swalwell.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Thanks for coming in.
Of course.
You got it. Good to see you.